I'm Jonathon Lusthaus from the University of Oxford. I'm in the Sociology department where I'm Director of the Human-Cybercriminal project. So I study profit-driven cybercrime and particularly the organisation of this particular industry. I think it's very interesting to put a human face on a topic that is often seen as a technical issue and to really understand it in more organic terms. So I had multiple influences. Some of these influences came from the existing organised crime literature and what's known as extra-legal governance. So at Oxford there was obviously my supervisor, Federico Varese, who'd written on the Russian mafia and other mafia groups. And then prior to that was also Diego Gambetta, who used to be at Oxford, who is also a leading figure in the study of mafias and organised crime. So that work was very influential in terms of some of the kind of background and in some cases the theory that I used. And I was also influenced actually when I started out in this field from some of the journalism around cybercrime, because that really provided a very interesting, more human-focused account than a lot of the academic literature had up until that point. I mean, I think probably the defining moment was when I began work in this area. Before that, I hadn't really thought about cybercrime at all. To me as well seemed like a technical type of issue. I'm a very non-technical type of person. And so the reason I became involved was basically Misha Glenny, who is a journalist on organised crime in the UK. He's written for a number of different publications, came to Oxford actually and gave a seminar when I was still a student on the book he was writing at the time on cybercrime, which ended up being called Dark Market. And that was really one of the first times I'd really seen this as a human phenomenon, and I was really fascinated by that world, and from that point on became really quite obsessed with uncovering the details of exactly how this world worked, who was in it, and to really understand all the different dimensions of it. So, I mean, studying cybercrime as a sociologist, I think is very important because obviously the attacks are quite technical. There's different aspects of this that really are very much about computer science, or certainly the use of computers. But every attack has a person behind the attack, so there's always someone at a keyboard, and it's very important to understand those people, because we've had a very, very long history of studying criminology, of studying other types of crime, and there's really no reason why we wouldn't study cybercriminals in the same way, why we wouldn't get a sense of who they are and how they've come to be in this business, and ultimately, you know, are there ways that we can potentially reduce cybercrime by understanding this human dimension better? My favourite aspect of the research that I do is probably the amount of travel that I get to do. So I get to go to all different countries around the world to carry out interviews with people, whether they're former cybercriminals or whether they're in law enforcement or in the private sector. And it's very enjoyable both from a research perspective, but also more broadly to see many different parts of the world, and often countries that I wouldn't otherwise have a reason to go to. So, you know, this study that I've done, this book that I've finished, has offered me the opportunity to go to Eastern Europe, to go to Nigeria, Brazil, a whole number of places that otherwise I probably wouldn't have had a chance to visit. So that probably is the most enjoyable aspect of the study. My book is about cybercrime as an industry, and that's why it's called Industry of Anonymity, because to me, one of the very important things to understand in this area is that this is not really about lone wolves anymore. It's not about individuals operating on their own. What it's become is really quite an organised and sophisticated industry, in my view, where we see marketplaces, we see firms and businesses, we see a high degree of specialisation and also professionalisation. And I think that's very, very important in terms of understanding cybercrime, because it is a business, and a lot of people involved in this are really out there for the profit motivation. And so if we can understand the structure and the way this works, it's very important to really getting to the heart of what cybercrime is today.